Hello and welcome to this Regional Futures Collaborative Projects Program information session. This information session has been prepared as a refreshed guide on a program that's been offered multiple times previously, but there's been a need to adjust process procedure since last time, and therefore we provide this information session for the first offer of the program in 2024 as the latest relevant information. The basic format of the session today is that we'll do an acknowledgement, we will walk through the strategic objectives of the program, we'll cover the eligibility, how to apply, and we'll attempt to cover some frequently asked questions at the end. Let's get underway. I do want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we gather. Where I am is known as Meanjin, so the traditional custodians are the Yagara and Turrbal people. I pay my respects to elders past and present, and also want to acknowledge any First Nations persons listening to this information session online, and all the First Nations people, groups and communities that we've had the honour and pleasure of working with through both our Deadly Innovation Program and the Regional Innovation Programs. Today we're talking about the Regional Futures Collaborative Projects Program. As mentioned, this is something that's been offered previously and has been refreshed by some tweaks to guidelines and refinements to our process of managing applications. So we'll run through what the program does, but if you're familiar with the program and how it was offered previously, you'll likely find that the overall intent hasn't changed and similar funding amounts still apply. It's also important to note that Collaborative Projects is a competitive funding program. We're collecting applications for this program in rounds, which we then present to an assessment panel and they review. But how they appraise or rate applications may vary depending on the funding available and the projects that especially stand out in the cohort being reviewed. The Collaborative Projects program is about bringing innovation to life. Region-led projects that are going to shift the dial and unlock economic opportunity for regions or for sectors locally. You've got grants of up to $200,000 and we need the partner contributions to be at least 50% of the grant sought. So, for example, if you're seeking $200,000 in funding under this program, you need to match that with $100,000 of partner contributions. And we will talk a little more about what we're referring to regarding both partners and what counts as those contributions in a few moments. But again, if you were to seek $100,000 from the grant, then you would need a $50,000 co-contribution. We're looking for projects that are, well, we won't call them shovel ready because they're not infrastructure. They're not building projects. Rather, they're activations. More project-related things, but they need to be ready to deploy. We're not looking for you to start the planning when you start the project. Rather, we're looking for projects where a lot of that planning has already been done, and you can get underway with activities relatively quickly and have the project completed within 18 months. And this is also about addressing local issues. We're looking for locally led or region-led initiatives to address those regionally significant and even globally relevant issues. If you solve the problem or you make progress on this problem, how relevant will it be to other people? Who else can follow? Who else can learn from your progress? What will be its legacy? Just to talk a bit about the strategic intent of this program, we can break it into three main pieces. First of all, it's really about having the strategy already done. So how does it align with some existing commitments and existing effort or investment at the local level? Making sure that it's region-led, that it's something that you've identified in either some strategic documents or other activities, to demonstrate that it's something that your region needs, wants, and will be able to derive real benefit from. So that's the first bit about having that strategy already done and having it led by the region. We're not looking to invest in a plan for a plan. Second, it's about having the right partners on board. Who do you need? Do you have the right people around the table to activate this opportunity that's been identified? Is it an innovation-driven growth opportunity? How is it that your team is the best placed group to initiate a change management process for your region? How are you unlocking economic potential at the local level in order to accelerate jobs and opportunity? So that's the second or middle piece. And then the third piece is around the legacy. When you finish this project, when you pack up and go home, what's left? What's the change that's been created? And how did the benefit from what you've done extend beyond the partners of the project? This summarizes the key parts of the program. So as an example, we're not looking to commercialize just a new piece of technology and see it implemented in a local organization or a local council. Rather, it's more about being able to create a new industry, a new opportunity, new jobs, and having those benefits broadly flow through the region or into other regions. The eligibility criteria for this is about being based in a Queensland region, and one of the most obvious questions is, what do we mean by that? Well, in this particular program, we have Queensland organisations that are registered for GST that are based outside the Brisbane City Council area. But inside Queensland, they are the ones that are eligible to be the lead applicant for this program. You would also need at least one other organisation that is in a Queensland region with that same definition, GST registered, and for them to be making a material contribution to the project also. But beyond two being on board and at least one being the lead partner, you can have as many further partners as you'd like. And they can be anywhere in Australia or even in the world, as long as you meet that criteria as a collaborative group. You'll see in the guidelines that we accept cash, like cash in the bank, but we also accept some cash equivalent elements to that. So cash as salaries and other contributions do count, but we don't count in-kind contributions. But cash equivalents are definitely accepted as part of the matched contribution. Let's now look at the assessment criteria in a bit more detail. We've got 4 assessment criteria, and the first one is around the significance of the opportunity or innovation activity. So in that, we're looking at what's the evidence base for the project. Do others face similar or related challenges? Who else would follow if you make progress on this? And how does it harness those local strengths and existing investment in your region? So it's really looking at what work have you already done around the need, the impact, and leverage. So that's the first criteria. To meet the criteria, you're going to have to demonstrate how the project will identify and address a problem to be solved or an opportunity to be leveraged through a place-based or sector-specific collaboration. How will it impact regional innovation for the benefit of the applicant, the partner organisation, further partners, but also the sector and the region more broadly? You have to deliver an innovative approach to the problem to be solved or the opportunity to be leveraged. It could even be said that we're looking for those types of problems that don't have an obvious owner, but they do require collaborative effort in order to be progressed or solved. For assessment criteria 2, we're looking at the strength of the collaboration. What's the commitment, expertise, nature of the partnership that you've brought together? And do you have, for example, letters of support, not only from the partners and other contributors, but maybe also end users or people that will be impacted by your project? Oftentimes, people talk about a collaboration. I've got a problem, so I seek a collaborative partner to help me solve it. But this program's about more than that. For this program, we're actually looking for its two partners that have come together that have a shared problem. They each have a part to play in solving that problem, and they each benefit in perhaps different or mutual ways from the problem being solved, and can then share that knowledge, that growth with others, broader than just the parties to the project. So it's not a commercialization grant, and it's not just about the parties that are investing in the project being the sole beneficiary. In meeting this criteria, you've got to demonstrate that you've involved the collaborative efforts and resources of the applicant organisation and at least one other partner in a Queensland region, and you're both sharing responsibility for the delivery of that project. It's got to be locally driven, even though it can have many partners. We really want to see that local drive, that local investment. It should involve leaders from perhaps within the innovation ecosystem that are aligned to the project's focus or outcome. And of course, that could be a very broad scope of people. What we're talking about there are people that have an innovation-driven mindset, who are influential and can help that change be effective and successful. And we want it to involve meaningful collaboration between the organisation partners and leaders and those who possess a shared purpose and have complementary expertise. As mentioned, those letters of support can be very influential and important in your application for demonstrating both the nature of the collaboration and the strength of that collaboration. Assessment criteria 3 is around the viability of the project. Do you have a clear plan? What's the track record of the partners that are involved? You may not have done this exact project before, but it's an innovation-driven growth project. You are demonstrating a level of credibility or a track record that shows that, yes, you're able to bring this to the table in order to deliver a project of this nature. Do you have a leadership group that can activate the change that you're looking to make? Is it achievable in the time and the budget that you've given? So we're looking for projects that demonstrate a clear plan, including project activities, outcomes, risks and mitigation strategies involving collaborative partner organisations that have a track record in delivering comparable initiatives, either in Queensland or in the broader innovation economy. We will want to see that you're engaging the local industry leaders who have the capacity and authority needed to effect the change required, and it will be well planned and achievable within the time frame and budget while demonstrating value for money. For criteria 4, this is very much around the legacy piece. And again, the legacy is, what have you got? What is left? What are the tangible benefits that have been developed as a result of the activities that have been undertaken related to the project? What is that sustainable change that's taken place? And how does it extend beyond the partners? And if you can translate that benefit to jobs, particularly high-value jobs, new jobs, and regional jobs, that can become a very compelling part of your application. So you must be able to demonstrate that it's been designed to deliver tangible benefits beyond the commercial interests of the collaborative partner organisations. And as we said, we're looking for that to go beyond planning here. We want things that are ready to deploy and activate. It's got to have the potential to create sustainable change, quantifiable benefits beyond the life of the project, and demonstrate job opportunity pathways. At this point, let's maybe use an example that brings these 4 criteria together and continues to align with the intent of the program. Say, for example, I'm a local council and I've got some underutilised space and I think I'd like to turn that into a robotics hub. And I've got a corporate partner who's able to refit the space and provide robotics activities, whether it be training, workshops, those sorts of things. Well, we'd look at that in the first instance, and there would certainly be a number of notes that hits for this program. But the key questions that we would ask in order to inform the application for this program are around why robotics? What have you done at the local level that informs you and provides the evidence that robotics is a skills need or a workplace need for your region and something that is currently lacking? So we'd look at what's that strategic intent piece. The next thing we'd ask around is what the council, if they're the lead applicant, what's their interest in the project more broadly? Are they going to take an active role in the space, or is this about what they can just simply do with some underutilised space not currently in use? Are they outsourcing the opportunity to another party, or is this something where they'll be really actively involved and engaged? And also, who else is actually looking to be actively engaged in this project and its associated activities? Are there corporates involved? Are there training providers, schools, or other organisations? So we'd be looking at who's going to take an active role in this. We'd also talk about, and we're going to talk about eligible project costs in a minute, but for this particular program, there's only a very small amount of the grant funding, up to $10,000 of the grant funding, that can be used for capital expenditure. So we'd be looking at what type of activities that you're actually looking to invest in order to bring the opportunity to life. So does it fit with the eligible costs? And then for the third part around the legacy, one of the key questions that we'd be asking is around how will this initiative create new pathways into jobs? Are there going to be some corporate parties that have indicated that they've got skills needs, or maybe is there startups that have skills need at a local level? They'll be looking to draw talent from this particular hub, or engaging or putting challenges through the hub. So what's going to happen that's going to engage the broader community or the broader business community? And whether that's startups, corporates, training providers, or others, how will they be involved in this robotics hub? So there's some of the things that can help you build out the project and therefore detail the really key points where questions would be asked. If we look at the program in terms of the eligible costs, as mentioned, salaries and salary-related on-costs for project staff can be part of the cash equivalent funding requirements. You can also use your project funding for consumables required specifically for the project. The capital expenditure is only up to $10,000, as mentioned previously. You can use it for reasonable travel costs necessary to undertake the project and activity. We certainly recognise that with regional projects, there may be travel, consultation or engagement, even showcase elements where there needs to be a level of travel across regional Queensland or even further afield. You can use the funding to get specialist advice and services from external providers. That is, people beyond the partnership. And that could be one area just to be careful of. With some projects, you may need to think about whether the people that are working in the project, are they best as a partner or as a supplier or a specialist advisor? So just something to think about in terms of structuring your project. Please also be aware, something we won't cover, our money won't cover alcohol for events. It's just one of those things about appropriate use of our government funding to make sure that these go to real activations and not be seen as going towards things that should probably be provided for through other mechanisms. This is a program that's been available through multiple rounds previously. We have done a little bit of a refresh, but the benefit of that is that there are a number of projects that are out there at the moment that have received funding under this program. And certainly encourage you to check the Advanced Queensland website. But now I'll just focus on three here that we can make mention of, but they're quite diverse across various industries. And that's why we don't have prescriptive requirements about what activities we will fund. We're really looking for what do you need at a local level for your sector, for your region, to shift the dial and unlock that economic opportunity that you've identified. So in Mackay, we've got the Mackay cane growers adapting a spatial irrigation tool. Now obviously that region has some real credibility and leadership in the cane space, and while their trial of this new tool is to adapt it to conditions locally, it will actually be able to be spread to other regions, to other organisations, and applied to the industry overall, far beyond that region alone. So that's where they were able to really put into their application not only their intent, but to show how it really met the requirements of this program. If you have a look at Redridge, our Canvas to Catwalk project in Outback Queensland, this was about bringing Indigenous artists together with Redridge in order to translate some of those artistic or artworks into textiles and then into fashion, and actually bring that to the catwalks of things like the Brisbane Festival and a number of other national and international stages, and actually really create a new supply chain and a new revenue source for our Outback Indigenous artists. So that was a really exciting thing because it's also about relationship building. And as much as it was around that supply chain development, it went much further than that. And the legacy, you can imagine, will be quite substantial from the training that was undertaken for some of the business needs, going into expanding the work from art into fashion, into supply chain. So that's a really nice sort of well-rounded application that hit the mark as well. Then you have Nutex, which is actually a project based on the Gold Coast at the Health and Knowledge Precinct, and it's about creating a dedicated simulation space for image-guided surgical technologies. This is around stroke and neurological conditions. And while there's a lot of tech and a lot of capital expenditure that went into that, it's not in itself what our funding supported. Our funding support was really about activating that space for some of the training opportunities internationally, but also locally and in a few different settings, making sure that that space can be accessed and utilised by a range of different cohorts and really be available. So it was the activation of the space that is the project that's being funded under this Regional Futures program. But you can see that, yes, there was a significant investment made locally, and there was a further strategic opportunity that was available and was articulated in their application. There was an activation component, and the legacy of that will be about reputation building of that space, both Queensland, the Gold Coast, as a centre of excellence in this particular medical technology. So again, three really diverse opportunities that we've been able to fund, and there's a lot of others, again, on the Queensland Government Advanced Queensland website. So I encourage you to have a look, but it does just show that it's not about funding one type of project, it's about building out your application to demonstrate those three key elements: strategy, tangible activities, and collaboration and legacy. To support you in developing up an application or to understand exactly what this program is about, we'd encourage you to have a look on the website for a number of the resources that are available. Obviously, the key documentation is the program guidelines. So have a look, read those through. In fact, we have a saying internally, read the program guidelines, and read the program guidelines again. But they are a good guide around what we've talked about today. And hopefully this webinar or other conversations will assist in you being able to really translate what the guidelines are asking for and help you really develop up your own proposal to hit those notes. There are some additional information on there as well, just to clarify some of the key points from the guidelines. So have a look at those as well. The tips and tricks is really one pager. How does the program work? How do I apply? What are the steps and what do I need to go forward? You'll see an example of the financial incentive agreement. So if you are successful in an application, and that would be the shell of what you're asked to sign and enter into. There's also a grant writing guide on the website as well. That was something actually put together by Tourism and Events Queensland, but we find it's very good, put in plain English. It's a really helpful piece of guidance on how to put together an application. And I think sometimes we get really focused on what the product is, what the project is, and sometimes we don't get to some of those things about how the strategic intent works, why the collaboration is the strength of that collaboration, why there is that legacy piece. So the other thing that I would say is have some persons from your network that you can share your application with and seek out some frank and fearless feedback from them. If you're sharing it with family, well, they will still love you nonetheless. But if you find people that you can trust, share it with them and invite open feedback on the application. Of course, you don't need to take all their advice on board, but seeing how they interpret what you've written in your application can be extremely helpful for making sure, have I hit the mark? Are they understanding the information that I'm trying to convey? So if you've gone through all of that and you're still thinking that this is the program for you, how do you apply? Well, on the website, the program guidelines are absolutely key. Read that through carefully and go through and make sure that you're hitting all the right notes for the program. There may also be, at this point, an awareness of partners and or relationships that could take a very good collaborative project into the realm of a great collaborative project. So a little time taken to shore up such relationships, partners, and get your letters of support together is worthwhile to ensure you're shaping your application correctly. Your application can then be submitted on the Smarty Grants platform. And please note that on the website, when there's a reference to the exact closing date and time, be aware that when that's quoted, it does truly reflect the closing time and date. We do not have a discretionary call to allow inclusion of late applications. And if an application does come in after the closing time and date, it just can't be considered in that current round. So please have foremost in mind the closing time and date for the round that you're applying for. What happens then is that you're playing the waiting game. It will go to an assessment panel for consideration, and please be aware that our regional engagement team does not itself assess applications. Rather, an independent assessment panel is engaged to consider the applications in line with the program guidelines. There may be some additional information sought from you, but mainly what you've put into the application is what you will be assessed on. And we'll endeavour to have those assessments completed as quickly as possible. Successful and unsuccessful applications are usually advised within a few months. So that's the kind of time frame that you're looking at. If you're unsuccessful, you'll get some feedback. But if you are successful, then obviously you go through and we start negotiating the financial incentive agreement, and we'll be looking for those projects to deploy reasonably quickly after that. And this is also a really useful self-assessment checklist. You've gone through all of the material, you've got an idea about what your project is, maybe you've got your partners on board, know what you want to do. Well, then have a look at this and just think about, okay, is this the right program? Am I ready to go to the next stage? So is the applicant organisation and at least one collaborative partner based in a Queensland region? Doesn't have to be the same region, but it does need to be in Queensland outside of Brisbane for those two. Now, do you have an innovative plan to support and grow your region or your sector? It can be a sector-based one. What is that? Where has it come from? What's that strategy? Do you have that already done, or the extent to which you have it done? And do your partner organisations, at least one or more of them, share the same goals? As we talked about, are you both invested in the development and deployment of the solution of this problem? Are you able to match at least 50% of the grant funds that you're seeking? As we talked about, there's cash equivalent elements that are able to be used in that one. And do you know the economic strengths of your region? Are you demonstrating how your project leverages those strengths, unlocks that economic opportunity, and will create pathways to jobs into the future? And we'll just refer back to that example mentioned earlier around the robotics hub. Is that a strength of your region or an emerging, untapped strength? It could be an opportunity in your region that this will unlock. And then a critical thing for this program, talk about the tangible and sustainable impact to the region or the sector that will be realised after the project is complete, and particularly how will people beyond the project partners benefit from this. But if you've gone through all of this and you're thinking, well, hang on, this isn't quite right for me. I know I've got a great project, but this may not be the exact right program for your project. Well, keep in mind that there are other funding opportunities under Advanced Queensland and elsewhere. Just a few other things that are there at the moment include Ignite Ideas, which is a flagship program that has many rounds. There's also Ignite Spark, which is also linked to Ignite Ideas in that it's about the commercialisation of a project, but is aimed at some of the more early stages in that commercialisation journey. Some of the other things that have been offered recently include industry research projects, which is a little similar, but definitely has to the collaborative projects that we've been discussing, but it is with a research organisation partner. And you're much more focused on research and industry outcome. So that may be one to also check out. There is some funding for precincts and places. That's something that we're supporting with various streams to that. Deadly Innovation is for Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander communities and innovators, and there's a number of partnership opportunities that we invest in under that. Female founders, there are a range of programs. We have networks as well as capability development programs under female founders. And also with the private sector partnerships. That's where we work with a specific corporate partner to release challenges into the market for people to partner with that corporate to solve those challenges. All of those programs are detailed on our website, but you can also come through to the regional innovation team and we can have a discussion, try and point you in the right direction. So that's a bit of a wrap-up of the Collaborative Projects Fund. As an addition, I'll cover off some of the frequently asked questions that often come our way as part of a potential collaborative project application. These may not cover off everything on your mind, but hopefully gives a little more clarity and context on how things work. The first question, what are the requirements of partners and how much cash should they contribute? We have not indicated a minimum or maximum amount that any partner can contribute, but to be the lead applicant and the first partner, both of those organisations must be making a material contribution to the project. So they must be contributing at least a portion of that cash, but it doesn't need to be 100% of the cash or the cash equivalent contribution. If we are doing the cash equivalent for salaries, also keep in mind that the person has to be contributing at least 20% of their time for their salary to be able to be counted and meet that criteria. Related question, are you able to make cash contributions equal to or greater than 50% of the grant amount sought? Well, if you are seeking $200,000 in grant funding, your cash and cash equivalent contribution must be at least $100,000, but you could be up to $150,000, or you could have $1 million. The project size is not limited as long as you've got that minimum 50% contribution of the grant amount that you're seeking. And potentially, your application may be considered more compelling if you have a greater proportion contribution. But this is really, though, around the strength of the collaboration and how the project funds that you're seeking will make a material difference to your project. So the answer is yes, you can absolutely have a project cost greater than $300,000 in total. Is only cash contribution accepted, or is matching in-kind services also allowed? Well, we did mention earlier, but just be really careful about consideration of any in-kind contributions. We do accept cash contributions. We do accept cash salaries, but a number of things around in-kind support are not considered to be acceptable cash contributions. And sometimes when you're looking at whether it be cash or cash equivalent contributions, what the partners are able to bring to the table, that might be where you need to consider whether a certain potential partner is in fact better as a service provider to the project and could be engaged as a specialist in line with those project guides, or whether they should in fact be a partner. So the way their contribution to the project would be counted could affect the role that they play. It's certainly something to think about in developing your project and deciding on your partners and the nature of the budget that you want to put together for this. Further question, what approach will the department take regarding ownership of IP in the projects? IP being intellectual property. So the department is not seeking to take IP. Rather, we're investing in a collaboration at a local level. But in order for broader benefits to be realised, some IP questions might be really important. So who owns the IP that's related to the project that you're progressing? How are you accessing that IP in the first place, if relevant? And at the end of your project, if there is some IP or restrictions on that IP, what does it look like? Because that will impact assessment of those broader benefits and legacy opportunities beyond the project partners. So this subject of IP is a really great question to consider. As a department, though, we're not seeking to have any IP over those projects, but we're trying to support projects where the regions being engaged along with Advanced Queensland, more broadly might be able to encourage participation and uptake by a range of other stakeholders. So we're not looking to fund in this program projects where IP is locked up and not accessible. It's definitely worth looking at how IP is covered in the agreement with the respective partners and if this contributes to a collaboration that truly has a broader benefit. Well, these are just some of the frequently asked questions that are commonly raised, and you may have some other questions that you believe are not covered by what we've discussed in this information session. If that's the case, you're welcome to email us at regionalinnovation@dtis.qld.gov.au, and our team will endeavour to provide some clarification if we can. We hope this information session has been both informative and helpful for a potential application to the Regional Futures Collaborative Projects Program. We appreciate your time and interest in the program, and we look forward to seeing applications to some exciting projects flow through. Thanks again, and bye for now.